Shana Tova. Natalie, Joshua, and Naomi join me in wishing you a year filled with new perspective, real forgiveness, and soulful change. This past June marked my 23rd year in the rabbinate. And for 21, now I guess I'm legal, 21 of these years, I've had the honor and responsibility of being your rabbi. I feel very blessed. This year, Naomi, who just graduated from college from the Tisch School of Dance at NYU, is live streaming services from somewhere in Kansas. Hi, Naomi. She's riding her bicycle across the United States from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And I know it's not just for exercise because yesterday she rode 100 miles. And it is not just any 100 miles. She is riding trash-free. Trash-free, with the intention of creating awareness about the impact of food-related trash and waste. Let me translate for you. She's riding with 3 friends. They're carrying their own gear, no support vehicle, no loving father circling overhead in a drone, ready to slide some bubble wrap underneath her so she can avoid the emergency room, which she hasn't avoided, but she's okay, thank God. And they are riding what they call the trash freeway. They have pledged to leave a no trash trail. This means wasting no food and reducing and reusing and recycling and upcycling their packaging that they might otherwise accumulate. And anything that they can't somehow reuse, they are carrying with them. So far, they've been on the road for 1,531 miles and have created no trash. Imagine that. And that is my prayer for all of us tonight. That through our process of careful introspection, planning, and action, we too might go through life with perhaps a little less trash. And I'm not talking about the stuff we put in the garbage can. I'm talking about the way we live our lives. Perhaps we can be a little bit less with that garbage that we carry around. Reducing the trash in our lives and reducing the feeling that our lives are perhaps trashed requires a conscious decision to make change. My rabbinate has changed over the years. I have changed. We all have changed. Even Temple Beth Shalom has changed. When I came here for my first visit in 1994, I couldn't believe, or at least it seemed to me, that every ceiling in every room had a water spot on it. I didn't realize that that's true of every dwelling in Miami Beach. We've all got some water spot dripping down. And oy vey, the carpet. Like I said, even the temple has changed. I am glad that the warm, welcoming, dynamic soul of Temple Beth Shalom eclipsed my first visual glimpse. There is much in the world we would like to eclipse. Refugees walking across imaginary boundaries, bigotry and hatred in all its forms, proliferation of nuclear weapons, global warming, evil dictators, terrorism, poverty, homelessness, abuse. The list is long, too long. Seeing what is really important and finding a way to filter out the rest is a challenge. But it is necessary if we want to continue to live in a meaningful and fulfilling way. Recently, I was with a group of Jewish professionals doing some training. We were told that we were about to see a short film of 2 teams playing basketball. Some of you might have seen this film before. It was made by Nobel Prize-winning psychologists Daniel Simon and Christopher Chabris. Our assignment was to count the times that the number of times that the basketball was being passed between the members of the team with the white jerseys. I could do that. I love basketball. Spoiler alert. We watched the film. We all counted. I got the right number. The rabbi who was leading the session casually asked, "Did you see anything unusual in the film?" Most of us answered no. Then one of my colleagues yelled out, "A gorilla!" I wear glasses. I have for a long time. Surely I should have seen a gorilla. The rabbi started up the film again, and bam! Right in the middle of the film, someone in a gorilla suit walks into the middle of the basketball court, stands for a few seconds, and then beats his chest, and then walked out. In the original experiment, 56% of those who watched the film failed to notice the gorilla. How many of you saw the gorilla walk by earlier tonight? Their brains were so focused on the task at hand that they filtered out the irrelevant and distracting information that a big chest-thumping chimp had come on the scene. It's a phenomenon known as inattentional blindness. Inattentional blindness, which is defined as the failure to notice the unexpected because the mind is otherwise engaged in the expected. Rosh Hashanah is our Jewish reason, our Jewish excuse, our Jewish imperative to recognize our own inattentional blindness and shift our hearts, our minds, and our souls to intentional awareness. The great Kabbalist Rabbi Isaac Luria described inattentional blindness as mochin de kadnut, which means a small or constricted consciousness. And we fall victim to mochin de kadnut when we view the world only through the narrow perspective of our own ego. For many of us tonight, our Roshes, our heads are highly engaged in the expected. We're counting the basketballs being passed by the players in the white jerseys. Some of us will count the number of people here. Some will time the service. Some will even time my sermon. Start now. Some compare the new melodies to the old. Some will think it is too cold. Some will know that it is too cold. And some change takes time. 21 years ago, I sat with Rabbi Glickstein in his office. I said to him, this is before I was hired, I said, "Rabbi, tell me one thing that is important for me to know so that I can come here with really clear expectations." Rabbi Glickstein responded, "You can preach every Friday night and every Saturday morning, but I preach all the main high holiday sermons. Change is difficult." I guess I had to wait till I was 21. Some will be happy that I'm speaking tonight, and some will not. I am a rabbi, and while it may not appear that I always take things seriously, I do take this seriously. All too soon I will evaluate, debate, critique, and reflect on these holy days. But as seductive as it is to count the basketballs as they are being passed, don't do it, for it is an activity that causes inattentional blindness. And I'm not just talking about these holy days. This inattentional blindness can easily pervade the holiness of our everyday. Instead, I ask you to nurture intentional awareness. So tomorrow, don't worry about all the stuff that's going around. Instead, listen to the liturgy when it calls out, "Uru Yeshenim," awake, you sleepers, from your sleep. Hearken to the shofar, the tekiah, the shavarim, the teruah, calling us to beat our chests and to declare, "Ashamnu al chet shechatanu lefanecha." I made a mistake. made a mistake. I have, I can, and I will do better. That's where we should be focusing our attention, on how we can do better. This holy day can help us to change our lives for the better. But it is not accidental. It is not, as Samuel L. Jackson says in the movie Pulp Fiction, I had what alcoholics refer to as a moment of clarity. Oftentimes, clarity can seem to come about spontaneously. I believe that Rosh Hashanah is not about spontaneity, but rather about purposely, consciously changing our perspective. This is the goal, simply to get a moment of clarity, to somehow find a deep understanding of some truth that's otherwise been out of reach to us. And the way we go about doing this, grasping this truth, is through a process called Cheshbon HaNefesh. Literally, Cheshbon HaNefesh means to do an accounting of the soul. But it's not just looking at the debits and credits of our behavior, but rather examining and evaluating our aspirational values, those values that we feel like we really hold true, but somehow aren't actualizing. Judging our behavior, if you will, is like counting basketballs being passed. Cheshbon HaNefesh is to see and feel and hear the gorilla beating its chest, screaming out to recognize the truth that we otherwise don't seem to see. It is, of course, much easier to do. It's much easier to talk about than to do. Kind of like riding across the United States. In the section of Talmud appropriately called Rosh Hashanah, the rabbis introduce a theory called Mishneh Makom, Mishneh Mazal. Some might translate it, as it usually gets translated, change your place and you change your luck. Let me be clear. I do not think that if you move out of the country to, say, Boca or West Palm, or, thank you, or even if you change synagogues, or even if you change which service you're going to go to tomorrow, that somehow you're going to magically, with some great stroke of luck, win the lottery. Rather, Mishneh Makom, Mishneh Mazal means that we can change how we view our lives and the world. But it takes work. For many years, on the first day of staff training at summer camp in Colorado, I would take the staff for a hike up the side of the mountain to a place called Watahotaho Rock. From this vantage point, about 1,000 feet above the camp, the buildings look very small, the people are very tiny, and the basketballs are uncountable. We sit in silence. Just a moment, a little moment of Mishneh Makom. For a few moments, we change our physical place. We sit and we look. New perspective. One year, about halfway through a very difficult summer, one of my trusted and longtime staff members asked me to go for a hike with him. I asked, where and why? He said, where? Mishneh Makom. Why? Mishneh Mazal. You see, I'd forgotten my own teaching, like we often do, and my student was going to give me a reminder. So about 45 minutes later, we arrived. We sat in silence for a long time, staring down at the little tiny camp below. I started to talk. He held up his hand, as if to silence me. And then with great hesitancy, the hesitancy of a student pointing out some truth to a teacher, he looked at the valley, pointed to the valley below, and he said, "You have, you can, and you will do better." And I believe that is our challenge. So how do we do better? Rabbi Robert Scheinberg teaches that we only need to adopt, as if only means it's easy. If we only need to adopt a broader viewpoint, a broader perspective, what the Kabbalists referred to as mochin de gadlut, a larger or expanded consciousness, seeing the world in a bigger way, in a different way. Cheshbon HaNefesh asks us to do an accounting of our soul, looking beyond our history, looking beyond our habits, and to missioneh mazal, to expand our consciousness and challenge our values at our very core. We've made mistakes. We're sorry about it. We want to apologize. We want to be better. But if we want to be different, that requires a different process, not just apologizing. It requires us to change. This is the real teshuvah, the real repentance that we seek. Preparing our minds and our bodies and our souls and our hearts for this real change requires honesty, humility, and effort. Certainly, this type of change does include taking responsibility for our actions. But the change that I'm talking about is not found in the chasm between what we should have done and what we did, but rather it is an intentional, in-depth examination. It is an update to our default value system and the restructuring our lives in such a way and behaving in such a way that honors these values, turning these aspirational values into real behavior. The sages of our tradition teach that on Rosh Hashanah, at this very moment, we are between who we were and what we will become. And the only way to not be in the same place tomorrow or next year requires doing something differently. And that's what I'm encouraging you to do on this Rosh Hashanah. Doing something differently. Looking at your lives, not just behaving differently, but looking at your lives through a refreshed lens. My childhood friend, Rabbi David Meyer, and I, we send back and forth the following story to each other before these holy days to remind us that if we are to change our behavior, we must rethink the values that underlie our choices. So once it happened that two rock hunters hired a pilot and a light airplane to carry them deep into the forest where they could seek out their precious gemstones with the greatest possibility of success. After all, they were rock hunters. As he landed, the pilot warned the rock hunters, "I'll return tomorrow, but remember, my plane only has the power to carry the three of us, plus one medium-sized box of your treasured gems." But the hunt was successful, wildly successful beyond their dreams. And when the pilot returned the next day, the hunters crammed box after box and bags of rocks under the seats, up in the thing up above, everywhere there were these rocks. The plane took off and became airborne, but the weight of the rocks proved too great. Try as he might, the pilot was unable to guide his craft over the top of a nearby mountain, and the plane fell crashing to the earth. Fortunately for the three men, amidst the destruction and the carnage, they somehow remained alive. Climbing out of the wreckage, the first rock hunter asked, "Where are we?" The second hunter looked around, surveying the crash site, and then he answered, "I think we're about a mile further than last year." Changing our perspective, changing our values, and changing our behavior are inextricably linked together. Maimonides, the great philosopher and sage, asserts that even one small personal change ripples out through the entire universe. He says that one who acts righteously tips the balance of the entire world and saves it. We're not talking about someone else. No, not the bat mitzvah with the unbelievable project, not the Nobel Prize winner, nor the President of the United States, or the rabbi, or the tzaddik, or the mentor. Our tradition is talking about you, and you, and you, and you, and me. We are the ones that can tip the balance. It's what we Jews have always done, and it's what we must do again. Dear friends, let this moment be the beginning of a new, a good, and sweet, healthy year. Let us find a way to reduce the trash that we make and the trash that we carry with us. Let us stop counting the unimportant stuff in our lives and instead focus on making our lives count. Let us missionate our makom, change our place by opening up our hearts in a new way. Let us shana our Roshes, changing from kadnut to gadlut, expanding our consciousness, challenging our assumptions, filtering out the mundane, and embracing the essential. Let our missioneh mazal, this new and changed perspective, remind us that we have, we can, and we will do better. Let these changes, big and small, ripple out and transform the world. And please, let us all go just a little further this next year. Amen.